Board. The Sandra Day O'Connor High School Air Force Junior ROTC Color Guard will present the colors and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone stand. I'd like to thank the O'Connor High School Air Force Junior ROTC for leading us. Roll call, all board members are present. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
And a second, all those in favor say aye.
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 5-0. Awards and achievements. Monica, are we watching? Okay.
Good evening, President Gregoire, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Weitenheimer, and special guests. It's safe to say that Mountain Ridge High School had an extraordinary performance at the DECA State Championships. The team took home 31 medals and won a slew of other awards, including the Platinum Chapter Award. 7 members qualified for the International DECA competition later this month, including the 3 state champions we are honoring tonight. They earned first place in AZ DECA's International Business Plan event, which involves the development of a proposal to start a new business venture in an international setting. The students developed a 30-page written business plan and presentation for a unique niche market gourmet marshmallow dessert creations company called Hot and Fluffy. I only wish this was really coming to market. Congratulations from Mountain Ridge High School DECA champions Akshay Ravi, Vivek Ravi, and Nithin Ravi. And I forgot to mention they are sophomore triplets. Their co-coordinators, Debbie Moore and Renee Woodruff, are here tonight. We invite their parents to come up to be in the photo. Congratulations and best of luck later this month. Each year, 20 of Arizona's highest achieving high school seniors are selected for the Flynn Scholarship Program, which provides an unparalleled package for undergraduate study in an Arizona public university. DVUSD is honored to have a student selected this year. A student ranked #1 in his graduating class who continues to take the most challenging classes. A student who held elective offices in National Honor Society and the Society of Male Scholars because of the deep respect and regard that his peers have for him. He has participated in cross-country and track and field teams and has been top-ranked because of his commitment and dedication. He has also served on the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council. In her recommendation letter, Sandra Day O'Connor counselor Saroj Juggernath wrote this: "Beyond the classroom, Colton was instrumental in creating and managing a program to encourage autistic children to incorporate exercise into their daily lives because of his belief system that supports physical activity with academic achievement and success. In addition, he collaborated with an ASU professor on his carbon nanotubes research and how these nanotubes can be used in batteries and their impact on the environment." Finally, Saroj writes, "Colton is an amazing, well-rounded student, intelligent, poised, and ready to embrace the future. He is among the top 10 students I have known and worked with during my 35-year career. Congratulations from Sandra Day O'Connor High School, Flynn Scholar, Colton Flowers." And we invite his family up for the photo. Congratulations. Our final honor tonight features our two newest Demonstration Classroom of Excellence teachers. This program was developed to recognize teachers who guide students to use their data every day in the classroom to drive learning. Mrs. Cheryl Paul, Director of Organizational Improvement, is here to recognize these extraordinary teachers. Mrs. Paul.
President Gregoire, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Dr. Weidenheimer, I am honored to introduce our Demonstration Classroom of Excellence recipients to you this evening. We have two. Mrs. Angie Grimm is an 8th grade social studies teacher at Canyon Springs STEM Academy and has been a proud wolf since 2007. Mrs. Grimm has made a commitment to continuous improvement and excellence in academic achievement. In her class, history comes alive as students partake in organic and authentic learning experiences, from analyzing real-life scenarios to discovering the hardships of victims of the Holocaust. Students identify areas of strength and areas in which they can grow and develop goals based on these reflections. These historians in the making and their teacher, Mrs. Grimm, truly are excellent. Join me in congratulating both. Ms. Sizemore teaches Algebra 1-2, Algebra 1-2 Honors, and Pre-Calculus at Barry Goldwater High School. This coursework is facilitated through strong collaboration in which students are the drivers. Throughout each lesson, students recognize individual strengths, reflect on strategies most beneficial to their learning style, and take ownership of their learning. Learning is differentiated at the most sophisticated level, in which students are able to move the work forward while planning for tutoring other Bulldogs seeking additional support. In providing these tutors with the skills to teach and guide, Ms. Sizemore is not only teaching students advanced mathematics, she is truly growing leaders. Now, that's a demonstration of excellence. Please join me in congratulating Ms. Sizemore. And I'm going to ask the principals, administrators of both schools to join us.
We're going to take a minute or two. For those that wanted to leave, they could, by all means. We'll miss you. Please write.
Oh, you're not going to make them stay? Have them stay.
There's only 6 people that have to be here. All right, 7.
No, Jim has to stay.
All right, 9.
And Gail.
9.
And
person in the back and Kim Redding, so that's 9, right?
technically.
Okay, since Ms. Ordway was talking, she goes first.
Oh, I was talking? Oh, we're doing board reports already now. Okay, let's see. We had the feedback for the CTE programs yesterday, which was amazing. We had people from industries, all the teachers gathered together. Not that the most important part was the food that the students made, but that was a very important part. I did notice that a lot of inroads were made, and a lot different than the first couple that I've gone to, because we are addressing the needs that the corporations and industries want us to prepare our kids with. So that was kind of cool. Also talked to a couple of, I think they are Chandler Evans, what is that? Sports medicine. They're again working on another dual enrollment curriculum, so students will be able to partake of that. So that was cool. Saturday, I do an organization called Calling All Fairy Godmothers, and it was our open house. Thank you, Mike Anderson, for letting me use your room. Anyway, I had 8 boys that came to get fitted for tuxes, and they were donated. I had a bunch of girls come, so it was fabulous. The car show Friday at Goldwater was fabulous, and I'm going to leave out a couple of things, but wherever I was on your campus or in your event, I enjoyed it greatly, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. O'Brien.
No board report.
Mrs. Fisher.
It's been a month, I think. I can't keep track of everything that we do. I just want to give a thank you out to the individuals throughout the district that I have met with over the last month. the individuals who have assisted me with looking at different things and security and things of that nature. And it's good to see that conversations are starting to occur that surround students within the district, and the great things are being communicated back to us. That's it.
Mr. Bear.
No report this evening.
And I have none, so I'll just scoot it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, President Gregoire. If you checked the website sometime yesterday, or was it the day before, the days are all rolling together, you would have learned that the Deer Valley Unified School District is home of the 2016 Arizona Elementary Principal of the Year. We will honor her at an upcoming board meeting, but our congratulations and our pride to Dr. Paula Tunis at Sierra Verde, and that's great. Amazing thing, and she'll go on to Washington representing our district, and we're very, very proud of her. More on that, and that concludes the super. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess, Dr. Galligan, we need to give an update on AZ Merit, so if you'll do that, please.
President Gregoire, members of the board, guests, AZ Merit testing began across the district 2 weeks ago on Tuesday, March 29th. All of our schools are administrating the computer-based version of AZ Merit, and thus far, we've had very few challenges arise from testing. Please knock on wood, please. Campuses are using all available devices to test in the hopes to complete testing as efficiently as possible and get back to normal instruction for our students. Teachers and principals have reported that the computer-based testing is much easier to administer than the paper-based testing of AIMS. Schools are using a combination of PCs, iPads, Chromebooks. All are working exceptionally well, and our Wi-Fi is handling the daily load. We made the decision, similar to last year, that software updates are not going out to our campuses during the AZ Merit testing window. So everything on the evening of May 6th will be updated, and that will be a note out to our teachers to make sure that they close their computers off and are ready for that update to occur that weekend. The high school campuses, which have the largest number of students to test, are using an A-B block schedule this year to accommodate longer class periods for testing and to better support students who take CTE courses on other campuses. Adjustments in the transportation schedule for middle school students taking math courses on high school campuses were made so that those students would be transported to the high schools on A block days. The testing window for ELA writing closes this Friday. As of this past Monday, yesterday, we had a 90% or higher completion rate for every grade level of ELA writing. Schools are conducting writing makeup testing this week, and I can say that our lowest percentage is 90%, and that's at grade 3, which would be fairly typical, as that is one of the more difficult grade levels to test with the typing. And both 9th and 10th grade are at the highest percentage at 96%. Students who required paper-based testing completed their testing last week, and the paper-based testing materials were sent back for scoring on Friday, April 7th. Of the few issues that have occurred, none have happened due to local Deer Valley technology issues, and almost all are either user error by the teacher, student, or an issue with the testing platform provided by AIR. We have followed ADE's procedures in cases of student or teacher errors, and that's about less than 30 district-wide since we started testing. And all incidents have been resolved within 1 day of that challenge being noted. Kudos, major kudos to our schools and their staff as they work hard to ensure that all students have an effective and comfortable testing environment to show what they know and are able to do with the Arizona College and Career Ready standards. I can't say more that they are doing a phenomenal job, and we know that our students are doing a phenomenal job and showing what they can do. Thank you very much.
Any questions, comments? Okay. Let's move on then. Let's go to Jim. Student enrollment report.
President Gregoire, members of the boards, Dr. Weidenheimer, we have 3 reports to share with you this evening, 2 of our regular monthly reports, and then a special report this evening I'll introduce in just a moment. Regarding the student enrollment report through the 142nd day, or March 31st, we're showing a 1.3% increase over the prior year. about 430 students, and that has been tracking pretty consistently throughout these last several weeks of this school year. So before I move on, I'll see if there's any questions regarding the student enrollment report.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll go ahead.
Moving quickly through the district financial report, showing a projected carry forward as of March for this fiscal for this particular fiscal year, projected carry forward of about $405,000. Year over year, we were at $281,000 March of 2015, so we're considerably better, and we showed a slight increase month over month, comparing March to February of 2016. We went from $336,000 in projected carry forward up to $405,000. Since this time, we've also received notice from the Arizona Department of Education about the student growth. So we just mentioned that we're up 430 students. We're projecting that to be about $1.6 million. That would be in addition to the $405,000 that's shown on the on this particular report for March. It is worth noting, just kind of a forewarning, if you will, that we will be having to do several budget revisions moving into the month of May. So statute still requires us to do a May 15th revision. The law will change if Prop 123 passes. That will allow us to also do a budget revision to include the Prop 123 increase. But that is embedded in the actual referendum itself. So we'll have to do a May budget revision and then potentially a June budget revision for the current year. And we will include the projected carry forward from the current year or student growth money when we do one or either of those upcoming budget revisions. So any questions regarding the student financial reports for the month of March?
Questions, comments? No, seeing none.
Okay, if not, the final report that we have this evening is, and just to set this up, several months ago, the board commissioned an efficiency and task analysis study. We selected the firm of Heinfeld, Meach and Company. Ms. Karen Smith is here this evening, and she is going to share not only some information regarding the report, but we also have we have already developed a corrective action plan or some strategies around some of the recommendations, and we were going to embed those into an improvement plan that we will be bringing to the board for the entire district. That will include not only the efficiency information, but also feedback from the SWAY analysis that been done, the two SWAY analysis. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Smith. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the board, district administration, community members, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening to share with you the report that we conducted, or the review that we conducted and the report that we issued. A little bit of background about who Heinfeld and Meach is. Those of us in the school finance industry tend to know the name, but a lot of people might say, Heinfeld who? Heinfeld and Meach Company is a statewide audit firm. We're an audit and consulting firm, and we've been around for about 30 years. Our primary focus is school districts. Gary Heinfeld and Nancy Meach started auditing school districts in 1986 at their dining room table, so it has grown to quite a company where we have quite a presence within the school finance arena, school administration arena. We audit about 80% of the school districts within the state, so we have quite an exposure to the industry itself. The other side of our house is the consulting side of the house, which is the side of the house that did this type of a study. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background of who we are and our experience working with school districts in looking at efficiencies, looking at compliance, and helping districts identify recommendations for best practice. The purpose of the study, the purpose of how it was commissioned, we were asked to do a limited review on job duties and efficiencies. And it was specifically to the district office administration. So we were able to look at the district office administration positions that report directly to the cabinet level organizational structure here within the district. We were able to take a look at the job duties, to take a look at if there's any duplication in efforts. We're also able to take a look at how the district office structure compares to other like-sized school districts here within the state. And from that, we were able to identify a summary of those district office comparisons that we did to other school districts, as well as the efficiency recommendations that we identified during this study. Our methodology was a kind of a four-prong approach. The first side of it was to do a job duty analysis, and that involved taking a look at 28 district office level administrative positions. And it started with a rather comprehensive electronic survey that we asked district office administrators to identify the key responsibilities that they have in district administration here in Deer Valley. Specifically, what type of decision-making responsibilities they have, the frequency, how often within a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis they were responsible for these different areas. From that, we were able to combine that with the current job descriptions, which the district has done a remarkable job over the last year or so, updating those job descriptions to make sure that what people say they were doing is actually reflective with what's in their job description. So we're able to do that comparison of the information that staff provided us in comparison to what was actually in the published job descriptions. From there, we then took the information that was provided to us in the survey and job descriptions and actually sat down with all district office administrators. So we actually sat down and talked about what systems do people use, what is paper-driven, what is electronic-driven, to identify what type of efficiencies we might be able to identify. That process took place during the second week of October there, 15th to the 17th. I was camped out here in one of the district office conference rooms and actually interviewed everybody, spent some time with them talking about their processes that they use to conduct their jobs on a daily basis. The other side of the equation for the review that we did was then to compare how this structure looks in comparison to other like-sized school districts within the valley here, specifically within Maricopa County. So I went out to all of those school districts and actually met with either their human resources office or their district finance office to identify how that structure looks, to identify how many positions, what were the comparison type positions, so that we're comparing apples to apples here. We reviewed the organizational charts as well as the actual levels of positions that different districts have employed. When we looked at the staffing comparison, we wanted to ensure that we were looking at like-sized districts. So we looked specifically at K-12 school districts. We felt it was important to look at the K-12 arena versus just high school or just elementary. So you can see here we looked at Chandler Unified, of course Deer Valley being your district, Dysart, Gilbert, Paradise Valley, Peoria, and Scottsdale. And for the purpose of the study, we wanted to make sure that within the report, we identified what the average daily membership enrollment was, so that as somebody picking up this report, if they're not as familiar with the school district environment, they can see that these are all very large school districts. These are very large K-12 districts here within the valley. So this was actual current year enrollment information. Then what we did is we took a look at the Arizona Auditor General's report, which gets a lot of publicity around February, March of each year, to take a look at what the administrative percentage of costs were for these comparison districts. And it's important to note here that this data that we had available to us in October, November, December, when we were preparing this report, was based off of the 2014 year. So while we're in the 2015-16 year, this report is often about 18 months delayed from the actual year in which the data is collected. So you can see here that Deer Valley had a 9.1% of its expenses categorized as administration. But I want to point out that this was prior to the reorganization that took place here at the district, so you're going to see on future slides how that compares now as far as FTE count, because we were able to compare 2015-16 data to 2015-16 data in the comparison districts. Since we issued the report in December, the Arizona Auditor General's report for 2015 did come out, and we're able to identify that Deer Valley's percentage of administration, while it was 9.1% of expenses in 2014, dropped to 8.5% the prior fiscal year in 2015. So you can see definitely that there was a significant shift in the amount of dollars spent on administration. And I also want to point out that on the AG's report, the Auditor General's report, when they classify the term administration, that's not just district office administration. So while it includes human resources, payroll, technology, superintendency, it also includes our school campus administration. So the principal, the assistant principal, the office of the principal, school secretary, folks like that. So this percentage represents a larger group than what we were looking at specifically when you're looking at that percentage of dollars. Another comparison or note to point out here is the comparison districts we listed here. From what I understand from your normal budget discussions, you include all of these districts with the exception of Dysart in your comparisons when you look from looking at class size, budget expenses, things such as that. The state actually identifies different peer averages. So we wanted to point out not only the district comparisons that the district typically uses, but also what the state identifies as a peer average, and then the state average as well. And our state average for 2014 for dollars spent, or percentage of dollars spent in administration, was at 10%. So even prior to the reorganization, Deer Valley was below that state average. When we look at the actual, whoops, I jumped ahead here, excuse me. When we look at the actual staffing structure, so this is where we were able to sit down with the comparison districts and actually identify what is the actual FTE count, the full-time equivalency count for those district office-based administrators, to take a look at what the comparison is. And when we looked at all of the school districts, the peer average was just shy of 40 FTE per district, so at 39 FTE, which is an average one administrator for every 884 students. You can see here on the chart that Deer Valley has 28 FTE full-time equivalency and averages one administrator per every 1,164 students. So you have fewer administrative positions here at the district office than any of these comparison districts. And this is based off of the 2015-16 data. So when you look at this, well, in addition to having 11% fewer, it actually calculates to almost 30% fewer district office administrators in comparison to your peer averages. And just to emphasize again, this is your district office based. It does not include principals, assistant principals, just those folks that are here at the central office. So how did we identify our efficiency recommendations? So we did the comparison as to kind of that structure, the organizational structure with the peers. And then we took those other three methodology approaches by looking at the job duty analysis, the job description review, and really gleaned a lot of information from the time we spent talking to the staff to identify efficiencies. And within the report, we go into each of these specific efficiencies. And as mentioned earlier, these have been kind of folded into the district-wide improvement plan that's going to be brought forward at a later date. But I wanted to highlight what these efficiency recommendations included. Many of them involved the systems that we use, the financial reporting system, the human resources systems, the payroll systems, the procurement systems, the budgetary systems that we have available to us. And the efficiencies recommendations identified ways that we could basically go, if we're looking at how many steps it takes to complete a task, how do we shorten those number of steps? How do we make it more efficient so staff aren't performing additional tasks that aren't necessary? So these efficiency recommendations included using a concept called budget control groups. Within the district financial software, there's the ability to establish mini buckets, if you will, of budget capacity at the school level or at the department level. And what these budget control groups allow for is fewer journal entries, fewer processing of changes within the financial system. So it would allow for sites and school-based administrators, administrative staff to be able to process requisitions much quicker without having to wait for budget adjustments to be made, because all of their money is kind of within that bucket. They don't have to worry about moving it from this supply line to another supply line. They can process it much quicker. Another recommendation we had for efficiencies is how the absence and leave submissions are processed, trying to eliminate some of the extra steps that are in place for that process. Ensuring that all departments, all school sites are using electronic requisitions. And after the report was issued, it was clarified a little bit further that for the most part, all of the district staff and departments were already using electronic requisitions, but trying to streamline that even further, making sure that we don't have paper going across from desk to desk. We all have our iPhones, we all have our laptops. It's very easy to be able to process those requisitions and not have it be lost on our desk with paperwork. How journal entries are processed, we had some recommendations on how to make that a more efficient process, try to eliminate some of the paperwork involved with that. Use of account code string, again on the financial side, trying to make it a little bit easier for various different departments to be able to pull current expenditures, track their expenditures for grants and other project-based budgets. Some additional recommendations we had is how we are tracking our substitute costs, making sure that the grant managers, the department leads have good access to good data to make decisions on how their dollars are being spent within those grants. The process of hiring employees, we ultimately want to make it a very seamless process, most importantly for our incoming employees, but also for our end users at the school site, making sure that it's a very streamlined process and trying to ensure there's no duplicated steps at our campus level or in our departments so that they're not hung up in that process. The utilization of position control. Position control is a concept that allows us to manage our budget better by ensuring that if a school site has 20 teachers allocated, that they aren't able to inadvertently hire a 21st teacher if there is a 21st number of FTE position, if it isn't already within the budget. So being able to kind of lock that down to protect the budget and preserve the integrity of the budget. Cash collection, this was not just an efficiency recommendation, but also a risk recommendation to ensure that how cash is collected at the school site, how that is then brought to the district offices in a safe manner to avoid any loss of potential resources for the district. The timeline of when we actually roll over financial software was included in our recommendations to ensure that there's a fine balance between when we roll that system over and when we actually start posting transactions to that new year. I think everybody in our school environment understands that we start a fiscal year on July 1st, but there's a whole lot of work that happens before that. We need to ensure contracts are issued, we need to ensure our budgets are set up, we need to ensure our payroll is set up, because operations continue right away on July 1st. We can't pause time and wait to pay people for 3 or 4 weeks while we have that system set up. So making sure that we have the right amount of time for that rollover to be efficient and effective. One of the recommendations was how we utilize our north bus yard, making sure that the district is utilizing that in an efficient manner to avoid any unnecessary transportation time, wear and tear on the buses, fuel costs, staff drive time, to bring the buses down to the main yard for maintenance and repair, to be able to do some of that right there in the north bus yard. Utilization of e-PARs. PARs are personal action requests. That is when we are either hiring an employee, transferring an employee, ending separation of work with an employee, adding supplemental duties, anything like that, looking at a more electronic format of doing that rather than a paper-driven PAR system. Online registration. Some of the district programs are still in a traditional paper method for registration, particularly in the gifted area, trying to streamline that so parents have quicker access to register their students online rather than having to fill out a traditional paper pencil method. Looking at some of our procurement solutions, what was specifically identified there within those efficiency recommendations included more electronic postings of our bids and our requests for proposals, trying to eliminate again some of that paper-driven method, the postage that's involved with mailing out RFPs, things such as that, trying to post that more in electronic format so vendors have immediate access to that. Content management, how we're managing all of our systems and our paperwork. If you can't get the general theme to a lot of this is try to eliminate some paper and try to keep more electronic records. So how we manage that content, how we make sure that we're preserving records in the appropriate manner, how we make sure that we're able to retrieve those records in an efficient manner, and making sure that certain records are disposed of in the appropriate time frame, and then of course maintained for the required records retention period as well. Compensatory time, how we track our compensatory time. In talking with the district office administrators, there seemed to be some different thoughts on how that was done. So part of our recommendation actually has already been put into place with the payroll department as far as how we're tracking compensatory time. Compensatory time is when an hourly employee works over 40 hours within a given week, and rather than paying out overtime, they earn that overtime in hours that they can take at a later date for paid time off. So how that time is tracked is very important because it is a potential liability for the district if that needs to be paid out. So in a nutshell, that is what the efficiency recommendations included. And I'm going to kind of jump through a couple of slides here, not to get into some of the details, but within the presentation, you'll be able to see more details about each of these observations that we identified, each of these recommendations that we included, what it actually means to the district. The district team has put together some actual steps as far as what that would mean to the district, who would be responsible for this, and what the next steps are. And you'll see some notations on the left with the blue stars as far as how that's being worked into the overall district improvement plan with some of these other observations and tools that have been provided by the district. So you can see throughout it, each of these areas that I talked about have been addressed within this overall recommendation and implementation plan by the district administration. You'll see the different departments here at the district office there in that third column who are taking kind of the lead in the implementation of these steps. There's a lot of steps as we go through all these recommendations. In addition to the overall recommendations we provided, the district team has then taken a look at 3 different categories. What is going to be included in the next year of implementation, what's already been partially implemented, and then what are some long-term objectives. So as a summary, when we look at kind of the overall high-level approach to this, when we looked at the duties, we did not identify any direct overlap, that you had 3 different departments managing new hires, that you had multiple departments taking care of the procurement side. You're very efficient and very streamlined in the overall duties of the district office administration team here. As I mentioned at the beginning, the district has a significant fewer number of district office administrators in comparison to other districts here within Maricopa County. The efficiency recommendations were provided to ultimately streamline some of these processes, how to ensure that we're taking the fewest number of steps to complete these administrative tasks that are required that we do. We have a lot of expectations from the various statutes and rules and expectations put forth by Arizona Department of Education. We want to make sure that those are implemented in the most efficient way possible. And the district's already done a great job of establishing some of these action steps and how to implement some of these efficiency recommendations. At the end of our report, we did include some recommendations for next steps, kind of how to take this into a phase 2. So now that we've looked at the duties and identified what type of efficiencies could be recommended and how the district compares in organizational structure to other districts, the next step that we recommend is to consider a compensation study to now look at how does the district compare, now that we know exactly what the duties are, how does the district compare in compensation? And I walked in during the study session earlier, and I walked in right as there's some discussion around how do we compare in compensation to other districts. So this next phase would be able to take a look at these comparison districts and identify not just at the administrative level, but at all levels, certified, classified, making sure that we're matching up like positions. So if we call somebody an administrative assistant, is that the same job description in another district? And how are those positions compensated? How many workday calendars? How many vacation days? When you look at Prop 301, how much of teacher base pay is being paid for out of Prop 301? What type of stipends do you provide, from hard-to-fill stipends to national board certified stipends, things like that, to really get a good understanding as to how you compare on a compensation level to other like districts here within the valley. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions or discussion that board members or members of the administration might have.
Comments, questions? Mrs. Fisher.
Well, I said earlier today that I was going to have a hard question for you, and I didn't have one, so I asked the board president for one, and he didn't fill it in either, so it won't be hard. When we're looking at these future job study or pay study, because I know that at one point we were updated that we were talking that there were other districts also doing something similar. And that's wonderful when you start talking about our administrative staff and our certified staff. Are you also going to look at market when we talk about our classified staff. Because my concern is we need to compare to other districts, but we also need to compare with what's in the market. You know, I mean, we all watch the news. We see the big push to get salaries up. And if that occurs, we have to figure out how are we going to absorb that? How are we going to handle that? So are we also going to look roughly of what market is doing as well as districts overall?
I'll tell you is in regards to our approach. Now, should the district decide to take this next step and ask us to assist them in that process, our approach is to look at obviously other school districts, because we look at school district comparisons and certified administrative as well as classified. We also do reach out to other businesses within the community. Now, I'll be honest and tell you that private sector is not always as willing to share that information. But we typically do get some bites from other municipalities, so whether you look at City of Phoenix, City of Glendale, to try to obtain some of that classified information from whether it be clerical positions, maintenance plant operation type folks, even with Valley Metro, looking at transportation folks, to seek out some of that information. Typically, when we work with school districts, and we've got several of these studies going on right now, the carrot that we kind of throw out there is we're willing to share the raw data with those that respond. So districts and other governmental sector industries are usually more than happy to provide the information because they know they're going to get the raw data back. Our review and our approach is that then do some analysis behind that to identify where are you kind of on those outlying areas? Where are you over, under, within compensation or other related total compensation packages? So the approach that we would recommend is definitely to take a look at market as a whole, not just education market, but understanding that some private industries wouldn't be willing to share that information.
Thank you.
Mr. Bear.
Thank you, Mr. President. When you did this review and analysis, did you look at our HR department at all?
Yes, we did work with the HR department on their processes.
Okay. This is 12 years on this board for me. And in those 12 years, I have seen that we've had a really serious problem with our HR department in this district. Number one, we do not have people that have HR degrees. Okay, so there's very little knowledge of the actual subject matter. I look at that and I think, well, isn't that kind of like hiring a civil engineer to do your brain surgery? Okay. The problem that's created in the 12 years that I've observed on this board is that the HR department didn't function on any normal HR protocols. It became a scenario of nepotism and cronyism is how a lot of the decisions were made.
Is there a question
Did you
in there?
find anything like that when you were reviewing?
We did not look at specific hiring of individuals. We looked at the processes that were used. So as far as interviewing, postings, how people are placed on the salary schedule, the application process, but we did not look at the specific decisions that were made on hiring.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I
Okay.
have one, oh, sorry.
Oh, Miss, go ahead. Brad, go
Um,
ahead.
approximately how much does the next step cost? I won't hold your feet to the fire, but if you could give a guesstimate.
I sent you an estimate, Jim. Do you remember offhand? I
Hey,
don't
President
have it right in front of me. I
Gregoire,
apologize.
Ms. O'Brien, the estimate she said would be $212 for a comprehensive study of the entire district.
Sold.
So since Ms. Smith can't remember, we
I know it wasn't that.
we estimated it would be approximately $12,500 for the compensation study, depending
That
on
sounds more like it.
depending on the number of positions and the number of districts that we would be comparing ourselves to, likely the list that you saw previously.
Thank you, Mr. Miclerino.
Anyway, thank you. I'm just, again, you've pointed out a lot of great things and a lot of things we actually are doing right. But I'm interested to see how our answers to these. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've lived in the Valley for a long time and always respected a lot that Deer Valley does, so I appreciate the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you so much. Okay, item 7A. Mr. Bear.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item number 7A, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to award a contract to Skyline Builders and Restoration, Inc. for the 2016 summer paint projects in the amount of $1,308,990.35.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I don't think we talked about this last board meeting, so I don't think there's anything new to be said. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, item 7B.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to accept a contract to Rytan LLC for the 2016 summer paving, concrete, and ADA ingress-egress projects in the amount of $739,616.
That is 7A2.
Yeah, 7A, yeah. I gathered that my error, not Ron's. So do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Now, you're on the ball and I'm not. 7B.
Me too. You got us wrong.
All right. Item number 7B. Mr. President, I would move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 2016-17 Employee Benefit Committee recommendation.
Do I have a second? Do we have
Yes.
discussion, please?
Jim, would you update the board on the latest information from the preview?
President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer, one change to the benefit recommendation. It's a very minor change, but unfortunately we learned that we have a district-provided short-term disability vendor who will no longer honor our contract for next school year. So we were in the process of replacing that vendor. So there won't be a change in terms of the coverage. It will be a change in terms of the provider. And that was just a decision that the provider made, that they no longer wanted to extend that coverage to us. We will work with the folks at Valley Schools. They have an excellent contract negotiator there to be able to leverage some of their preferred providers to be able to replace the provider. So it was Cigna was the provider of our district-sponsored short-term disability plan. We'll just have a new provider for that. It will not affect our open enrollment because all employees that are eligible for this benefit automatically receive it, so they don't have to open enroll or voluntarily choose that. So the only change doesn't change the benefit. I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that upcoming change.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
I
Go
want a
ahead.
clarification. Mr. Miglorino, so there will be no increase to our employees for their benefits, is that correct?
President Gregoire, Ms. O'Brien, there will be no increase for the employee paid portion, but since if an employee has elected for dependent coverage, there'll be about a 6% increase,
Okay.
which was the renewal. Was 6%.
Okay.
And
Any
did
other
we ever,
questions?
oh, sorry,
Go
did we
ahead.
ever get a dollar amount on approximately how much the employee benefit package is worth to an employee or costs the district roughly?
Ooh, it's a
We
stump
have that
to-
information, and I don't want to quote a number off the top of my head because I'm sure I'll be
All right, you
way
just
off.
send it
So
to
I
me,
will include that
or
in
include it in the
the Friday
update.
update. I'll have that data.
Okay. Seeing any more conversation? None? Call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item 7C.
That was B, right?
Yep.
All right, good to go there. Are we ready for C?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. President, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 2016-17 Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook.
Second.
Okay. Do you guys want to, Dan, go ahead.
President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer, tonight is the second reading for our student rights and responsibilities. Jean Copin, who's our manager of administrative leadership and services, will be sharing the changes we've made since the first reading.
Good evening, President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer. I'm pleased to present the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook proposed changes for the 2016-17 school year for tonight's second read. The Student Rights and Responsibilities Committee met on March 28th to discuss recommendations and directions received from the governing board during the March 10th study session. In addition to the conversations and information shared during the study session, written recommendations and questions from 2 of our board members were submitted. All information, questions, and suggestions were reviewed by the committee, and several revisions were made based upon these recommendations. The committee is very appreciative of the feedback, and we hope that the new recommendations will add the desired improvements. During the study session, the committee was asked to consider the following direction. First, add additional information about the Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports PBIS structure. Second, add information explaining the importance of parent involvement throughout each process. Third, consider alternative actions to suspension. And the last one was reevaluate the minimum consequences recommendations for infractions in the discipline matrix. On page 27, additional information about the PBIS structure was added. The PBIS information in the SR&R handbook will address the following questions for parents. What is school-wide PBIS? Why does PBIS work? Is it a curriculum? Can parents be involved? How can I get school information about my school-wide PBIS plan? Additionally, links to the Arizona Department of Education and COI education sites were also added to assist families in finding additional information about PBIS. The committee desires to emphasize the importance of parent partnerships when students require interventions for misbehavior. 3 additions have been included in the SR&R to further emphasize the importance of our parent partnerships. First, the committee has added explicit language about parent involvement in the due process section on page 39 under the title Due Process. Language has also been added to the discretionary statement, which is located in the top portion above each piece of the matrix, and that this piece explains that parent communication is expected for all disciplinary referrals. Another addition was a welcome letter from Dr. Weitenheimer has been added in the front of the handbook right after the acknowledgement page to emphasize the importance of parent involvement. Throughout the committee's time together, we have discussed the importance of reducing off-campus suspensions at our schools. Behavior management is about using strategies that will change misbehavior into behavior that is productive for the student. Although suspension is a consequence that is sometimes deemed appropriate, many infractions can be handled through other strategies. The committee reviewed alternatives to suspensions for the following reasons. Suspending kids is very unproductive for academics. Some kids get suspended on purpose to get out of work or away from something that they do not want to cope with or deal with. Suspensions are not an effective deterrent for many kids who do not see it as a significant consequence or a negative stimulus. Providing alternatives to suspension can be much more effective in getting students' behavior to change, and there are many alternatives that motivate students better than suspending them. The committee reviewed alternatives to suspension strategies that are currently being used in our schools. These strategies have been organized into a reference guide that will be included in training materials for our school administrators. Here are 3 examples, just a snippet out of the guide, that are examples to alternatives to suspension that administrators can use in lieu of out-of-school suspension. This is just a small example of what the resource will look like and options that will be available to administrators. We will be working with our administrators to develop some best practices around when these may be appropriately substituted for out-of-school suspension. Lastly, the committee reviewed each infraction's minimum consequence. The committee used neighboring district handbooks as benchmarking tools, considered the severity of each infraction, and considered research and best practice when making recommendations for changes in the discipline matrix. The proposed changes were submitted to the board in the March 4th Friday update. The matrix begins on page 45 in the handbook. 27 infractions were identified for changes. The committee also specifically reviewed infractions that impact school attendance and changed the minimum consequence to include a conference with parent and student. Since school attendance is mandated through Arizona statute and involves enforcement through the family court, the committee felt it is vital for families to be brought in immediately to help generate solutions for poor attendance. On behalf of the SR&R committee, I would like to thank our governing board for your considerations of this committee's recommendations.
Thank you. Go ahead. Ms. Fisher has a couple questions.
Actually, they're not questions, it's just comments. I really appreciate the work you guys did. We will never get a handbook perfect. We will never get discipline perfect because kids don't come with manuals, not for parents and not for us. But I really appreciate the work the committee did. When I got the Friday update, I was giddy. I was so happy that it takes a step forward to the discipline that I see in the changes is helping our kids grow up versus making them comply. And I don't know that is what makes sense, but to me, when I read it, it was like, wow, this is the first step to really helping our kids develop into great people. I really appreciate the work the committee did.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Okay. Any other comments?
I would also like to say thank you for taking all of our comments and including them and reconsidering the discipline matrix. I really do appreciate it. I think we've taken great strides forward in helping our students. So please pass along to the committee. Thank you for all their hard work.
Thank you, I will.
Yeah, the SR&R committee is probably one of the toughest every year. It's always anyway, a lot of opinionated people on that. So anyway, thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on. Thank you. Oh, I guess we have to vote on it too. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 And there goes Jean.
All those against? Abstentions?
Extension.
401. Okay, consent agenda.
Okay. Mr. President, I move that the board accept the consent agenda items 8A through 8K.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 5-0. Actions 9A, approve human resources changes.
Mr. President, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the human resources changes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item 9B. Oh, that's, well, we still have to make the motion.
Go ahead, Mr. President.
Go ahead, make the motion. Then I'll do the,
Okay, I'll do it. Mr. President, I move that the governing board approve a proclamation declaring April 10 through 16, 2016 to be Volunteer Week in the Deer Valley Unified School District.
Second.
okay. And with that, I'll read the proclamation, then we'll do the vote. Whereas the entire community can affect positive change with any volunteer action, no matter how big or small, and whereas volunteers can connect with local community service opportunities through our schools, and whereas hundreds of volunteers working in our schools utilize their time and talent daily to make a real difference in the lives of children and adults, and whereas during this week all over the nation service projects will be performed and volunteers recognized for their commitment to service, and whereas during this month Deer Valley Schools will be recognizing volunteers for their commitment to students and staff, and whereas the giving of oneself in service to another empowers the giver and the recipient, and whereas experience teaches us that government by itself cannot solve all our nation's social problems, and whereas our country's volunteer force of over 64 million people is a great treasure, and whereas volunteers are vital to our students' future as caring and productive citizen. Now therefore, I, Michael Gregoire, serving as President of Deer Valley Unified School District Governing Board, pending vote, do hereby proclaim April 10th through 16th, 2016 as annual observance of Volunteer Week. Can I get an affirmation or a vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Where were we? 9C.
That's it. Mr. Mr. President, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the land exchange agreement and the per unit payment agreement between Pivotal Realty and Deer Valley Unified School District.
Second.
Second. Yeah, why don't you summarize real quick, Jim?
Yeah, President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Weidenheimer, we appreciate the opportunity to include this in this particular agenda. The developer reached out to us. They have a closing this Friday, so the fact that we were able to at least consider this at this point in time is helpful to them in their process. Very briefly, there are 2 parcels in the West Wing Mountain community, so near West Wing Elementary School, that originally were zoned for commercial purposes, and they have been for sale since the West Wing community was first developed. They have not been able to sell them as commercial properties, and so the developer reached out to the city and asked for a rezoning application. As a result of those conversations, we mentioned that the West Wing Elementary School was at capacity. We reached an agreement with the Pivotal Realty Group to provide a per unit voluntary assistance fee of $750. The 2 parcels will yield about 140 homes, so 2 small parcels. And in addition to that, originally Pivotal provided us a parcel at the near the corner of 83rd Avenue and Happy Valley on almost an unbuildable site for our purposes. It's the topography of the parcel. It's on a hillside. So we are looking at one agreement to trade the hillside parcel for another parcel at the corner of Dixoletta and Lake Pleasant Parkway, which would be near the 303 for future purposes of the district, as that area may grow well into the future. And then the $750 per unit voluntary assistance fee that would be used to offset some of the costs of being able to accommodate more students at West Wing as they would develop and build out those 2 parcels with 143 homes. So pending your consideration this evening, that's what is being proposed, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Item 10A, preview 2016-17 Certified Performance Pay Plan.
Good evening, President Gregoire, members of the governing board. It is my pleasure to represent the Performance Pay Committee to ask you to preview the plan for this year, for next year, I'm sorry, for 16-17. At the board request, we have tried to keep you updated with where we are with the development plan. We have submitted our plan, our committee meeting minutes, as well as a draft of the plan and the Friday updates. And I believe you have a draft of the plan before you right now also. So this should be a short presentation. I would like to recognize our Performance Pay Committee members. There are some members in the audience. I'd ask them to stand up if they would. So you can see some of our teachers and administrators that are on that committee. And as you see, we have 4 teachers, 4 administrators, and 2 parents represented on that committee. We have met so far. We had very successful meetings this year, and they didn't take nearly as many meetings. And we have met now 3 times, and we have 1 more meeting left to talk about communication. Basically, the 2017 plan that we're proposing contains the same 3 components and the same weightings that were in the plan this year. With a slight twist of adding professional development hours to the plan. I'll explain more about that later. But the hours piece would be 10%, evaluations with the strong evaluation system would be 50%, and the district letter grade would be 40%. So it's fairly straightforward and very similar to the existing plan. And this just summarizes the comparisons to the 15-16 plan. So this is comparing 16-17 to 15-16. The things that are consistent, as you just saw, are the components themselves and the component weights. All of the payout matrices are the same, the matrix for the cuts for your evaluation and as well as the letter grade and the hours. The appeal process is the same, and the ineligibility conditions, and the fact that we started prorating for higher date and FTE last year with hours as well as all the other components is the same as this year. The changes, I'd say major changes, but I believe these are the only changes except maybe a date or two. We added professional development and a sample list of professional development options to be combined with the professional responsibility hours. So now the plan reads that you must have 20 hours of either or professional development or professional responsibility hours at the school. We added one more member to the appeal committee so that we had an odd number of members on the appeal committee. Yes, ma'am.
My question, Michael, is it okay? From the committee, I know that there were not parents, a while ago anyway, there were not parents on the appeal committee, so how did you?
Yes.
From where did you add?
President Gregoire, Ms. O'Brien, we added another certified teacher to the appeal committee. So now the committee consists of 3 teachers and 2 administrators, and you will have either 3 votes or not 3 votes for the appeal to be approved. And the final thing is we changed the appeal due date just to match up with the days of the week for this year versus last year. Our next steps are fairly straightforward. We're going to, as I told you earlier, we're going to meet one more time to finalize a communication plan, and then we will begin communicating following the board approval. So I guess technically, literally, the next step is we will bring this back to you in 2 weeks for your approval. We will include in that meeting a public hearing right before the meeting so that we have an opportunity to also meet the board's request to have that public hearing setting.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Item 10B, negotiation solution team salary recommendation. Jim.
President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Weidenheimer, based on the information and the discussions that we had with the study session that preceded this regular meeting, really just have an oral report to share with you, which is just summarizing that meeting. We're working on a list to develop 2 recommendations, one for both of them contingent on the passage of Proposition 123, but one plan for the fiscal year 16 allocation of Prop 123, which would be more akin of one-time expenses, combination potentially of capital expenses as well as longevity one-time payment for our employees, and a fiscal year 17 and beyond plan, which would be ongoing expenses likely to include salary increases for our employees and to deal with some of our known issues in paying employees, trying to correct some inequities that have been created with some of our processes. We hope to bring that back to the board. The negotiation solution team did agree to meet on the 20th of April. We'll have that information prior to the 21st if we could update the board at that study session there. But we intend to bring the recommendation to the governing board for your consideration on April 26th, that next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think we wore ourselves out at the study session. So, item 10C, 2016-17 K promotion, retention, acceleration, and grading handbook.
President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Weidenheimer, this evening I will share the 2016-17 K-8 PRAG handbook. As you know, the Promotion, Retention, Acceleration, and Grading Handbook is a resource for teachers, administrators, and parents. It is housed on both the portal and district website. We also provide it in print to our administrators. The purpose of this handbook is to provide information on the promotion, retention, and acceleration of students in grades K through 8. It also delineates uniform grading and reporting guidelines for teachers and administrators. Each year in January and February, a team meets to review the current PRAG handbook, bring possible revisions and refinements, and work to provide clarity in each section. Last Friday, in the board update, we shared the draft PRAG and a document that references the changes and the page numbers for each of those changes. This year, we looked closely at what was already in the PRAG and refined wording and procedures for greater clarity, as we do each year. The greatest changes came in providing clarity in the grading section, continued refinement of information about high school courses in middle school, and additional clarity and information on early admission to kindergarten and first grade in the acceleration section. The guidelines outlined in this handbook adhere to the requirements of the Arizona Revised Statute and Deer Valley Unified School District policies and regulations. This handbook is reviewed and revised every spring, and that's typically during the time when the Arizona legislature is in session, and any changes that might occur through them, we would bring to your attention. We have a communication timeline established for the PRAG, so each of our administrators and teachers know where to access it and can communicate updated information prior to the end of the school year and entering the 16-17 school year. Showing here is the communication plan for this spring. That communication timeline does continue into next school year. The PRAG work team is a diverse and passionate group of educators. We have many philosophical discussions. In addition, we sought feedback from teachers, administrators, and parents and made changes accordingly. Each of the parents listed are non-educator parents. Their input and feedback is greatly appreciated. We will bring the 2016-17 PRAG back to the April 26th board meeting as an action item. This handbook will be available, as I mentioned before, through the digital print shop, and it will also be housed on the portal and the district website for our community. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Do you want to ask your question? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Public comment. We have 3 speakers. Before you speak, Mr. Bear is going to read the admonition. But the speakers will be Keith Preston, Ed Baldwin, and Lauren Sheehan in that order. Right here.
Oh, it's right here, okay. All right, all set?
Go ahead.
The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing their name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary, to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask a staff member to review the matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda.
Keith, go ahead.
President Guekra, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer, and guests. It's my intention to run for the governing board in the November election. And before I tell you why, I thought I'd introduce myself. I'm about to retire from a 38-year career in public education. For 27 years, I was a band teacher, both at elementary and high school level. For the last 11 years, I've been a district level administrator in a neighboring school district whose last part of its name ends in Valley as well. It has been my greatest joy to serve the children of the schools and the districts that I've worked for. I've lived in the Deer Valley School District now for 11 years. My son attended Sandra Day O'Connor High School. I love it here. This is a great community, great people, great friends, great location, and the students, teachers, and administrators deserve a governing board that is transparent and responsive to them, and I believe that I can fill that role. I do not have a criticism of the current board. In fact, I have just the opposite. I have thanks and my gratitude for service to the community, and I look forward to my opportunity to serve in that role come November. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ed Baldwin.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer. My name is Ed Baldwin. I'm a simple parent. My son is a senior at Sandra Day, and during the conversation, I discovered what I thought was an issue, but found what appears to be a district-wide concern. The concern is the access by different types of recruiters, whether it's technical school, trade school, military, or university, and presentation of non-traditional types of learning to prepare students for after high school. Non-traditional, like balancing a checkbook, or how do you lease an apartment. When I met with, or spoke on the phone with, or exchanged emails with members of the district, Assistant Principal Brazil and Lieutenant Colonel Simmons at Sandra Day, and a solution emerged which is either no cost or very low cost, which makes a lot of sense to me. And lots of thanks to the men and women at Sandra Day O'Connor for coming up with a solution. In this school year, they modified the bell schedules on Thursdays by shortening the class schedule a little bit by each class to create a 41-minute extra period. During this extra period, it's used for the teachers to help at-risk students, which is a great idea. But what about the students that are not at risk? Now those kids are going to do something. Why not make it productive? So my thought is, after meeting with Mr. Brazil yesterday and Lieutenant Colonel Simmons, use that as a time to bring in a structured way guest speakers from whatever trade school or university or two-year community college or whatever, set up teaching by volunteers, probably from the school, to talk about the leasing or buying a car or whatever, resume writing, and use that to allow those at-risk or not at-risk students on a volunteer basis, so you don't push them into it, access to that information. So it's current, it's actionable, it helps them prepare, and it's no cost. That's my presentation, my recommendation based on the good information and the good work done by Sandra Day. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Lauren Sheehan. Thank you, sir.
President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Feitenheimer and guests, I'm Lauren Sheehan. I'm principal at Boulder Creek High School and representing the building leadership team. I would like to this evening acknowledge assistant principals because this is Assistant Principal Appreciation Week. Assistant principals aid the principal in the overall administration of the school. Some assistant principals hold this position for several years to prepare for advancement to principal positions, and others are truly career assistant principals. They are primarily responsible for scheduling student classes, ordering textbooks and supplies, coordinating transportation, student discipline, working with custodial, cafeteria, and other support services, attendance problems, social, recreational programs, health, safety matters. They counsel students on personal, educational, and vocational matters. With the advent of site-based management, assistant principals are playing greater and greater roles in ensuring the academic success of students by helping to develop new curricula, evaluate teachers, and dealing with school community relations. I think you would agree that assistant principals play a major role in the success of our students and our campuses. I want to be sure that we acknowledge the dedication and hard work of each of these professionals. They are often overlooked, overworked, and underpaid. As a result, I want to be sure that we acknowledge, as a Deer Valley Unified School District, this week as Assistant Principal Appreciation Week, and thank them both personally, professionally, from everyone in this room for their hard work and dedication. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned.
What? Need to take any of that? That can go wherever. I will sign this in just a bit. What? Do you have a blue pen like this?